All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. Hope you all are having a good day so far. All right, time to do something that is way long overdue. I have been saying I am going to finish out the Making the Case series by Clayton Crowley for a long time. This one is Wilt Chamberlain. I was asked in the comments to react to Wilt first and then Bill Russell, and after that, I think I've hit all of them, but I'm gonna have to look into that. But specifically asked if I would do Wilt Chamberlain first and then Bill Russell, because he said the order does matter. So I'm like, all right, yeah. But I also know I'm 6 months overdue on doing this, so it's time. And I'm really curious because still to this day, no matter how much I've looked into Wilt Chamberlain, I feel like there's still so much I don't know. So I'm down with learning more. And these Making the Case videos are filled with knowledge and information. So we're definitely going to learn something more right now. As I always do, I'm going to link the original video down below. Clayton Crowley's channel is pretty massive. But it's a fantastic channel, so I highly recommend it. If you guys want to check it out, go ahead. Links down below. And everyone, please leave this video a like. Helps out a bunch. And without further ado, let's learn more about Wilt Chamberlain.
Basketball is...
this was the guy who was considered the GOAT before Michael Jordan. So let's do it.
Special. The size of the court and the lack of pads or helmets give fans the most intimate experience of a team sport that exists. And because of the different styles that basketball allows for, players develop their own distinct identities and signature styles through their creativity, flair, and athleticism. And although no player succeeds alone, the scoring volume and two-way nature of the sport give individual stars a nearly unprecedented amount of control over the flow and outcome of a game. For this reason, players are constantly compared to their peers and to the legends of the past in order to answer the most hotly contested question in the sport: who's the greatest to ever do it? For many, the question is redundant. They believe in only one right answer, their answer. Others might have their own personal stance, but acknowledge one or two alternatives. But I believe that there's much more nuance to the question of greatness and more answers to it than you might think. By my count, there are 8 players in NBA history that have a substantial claim as the GOAT. It's a subjective thing though. I can't give you a definitive answer. All I can do is make the argument.
Yep, that's why I like these videos.
So today, I'll be making the case for Wilt Chamberlain as the greatest basketball player of all time.
Yes, sir. For those of you who have never seen a video in this series, he basically takes all these 8 players individually, and like he said, he literally just takes his personal feelings out of it, and he's just gonna make the case for this person being the greatest player of all time, and it's fantastic.
Wilt. The single most dominant physical force basketball's ever seen. That's the case, right? First, I tell you that Wilt Chamberlain was and remains the most outstanding anomaly of physical superiority that has ever played basketball.
Fair.
Then I tell you about how his era-specific advantages didn't exist, and that Bill Russell had better teammates, which is why he won so many more championships than Chamberlain. That's how the Wilt Chamberlain argument always goes. If I follow that script beat for beat, I'll be making a video that's already been made 100 times. So let's write a different script. We'll hit some of the same notes and see some of the same landmarks, but maybe we can end up somewhere we haven't been before when it comes to Wilton Norman Chamberlain. Where did Wilt come from?
What I'm looking forward to here is I still have this biased view of Wilt that he was a me first kind of player. So he was more about his stats than he was about winning. Kind of like an older school version of like LeBron James, who's more about his stats than he is about actually winning championships and all that. So I would like to be proven wrong on that. So let's see.
I don't mean where did he grow up. I'm not making a biography. I mean, what did basketball know of Wilt before he stepped into his first NBA game in 1959? We know about the hype surrounding LeBron, Jordan being taken 3rd in the draft, Magic and Larry's college rivalry, and I think it's important to know and understand what Wilt was before he became the Big Dipper. Wilt was the first basketball superstar. Coming out of high school, he had over 200 colleges vying for his commitment, a level of attention completely unheard of for a high school prospect at the time.
Damn.
He committed to the University of Kansas, largely because of head coach Phog Allen's deep ties with James Naismith, basketball's inventor. Of course, freshmen weren't normally allowed to play on varsity in those days, so during his JV season, the NCAA introduced sweeping changes to rules like offensive goaltending and inbounding violations to try to mitigate what they perceived as a threat to the competitive balance of the game. They even introduced rules that would prevent Wilt from dunking the ball from the free throw line for his foul shots after they got wind that he was doing so in summer scrimmages.
That's so
and
nuts.
so began the influence of basketball's Goliath. A name fit for Chamberlain not just because of his size, but because of the danger that he seemed to pose to the game's very foundations. Despite the new regulations, in Chamberlain's first varsity game, he scored 52 points and grabbed 31 rebounds.
Good God.
Single game
Wait,
record.
say it again?
Varsity game. He scored 52 points and grabbed 31 rebounds.
31 rebounds. I know I'm going to hear a lot of numbers like this throughout this video, but I'd never get comfortable with it. That's insanity.
Single game records for Kansas that still stand today. His first varsity season concluded in the NCAA championship against the undefeated University of North Carolina. The matchup was broadcast on an unprecedented number of radio and television stations, due in large part to Chamberlain's mythical status. The Jayhawks fell to the Tar Heels in triple overtime despite Chamberlain's best efforts, for which he was named the tournament's most outstanding player. And so the seeds of Wilt Chamberlain's enduring basketball legacy were planted. An outstanding player who put forth Herculean efforts and gave us superlative performances that were nonetheless negated by losing. After one final year at Kansas, Chamberlain joined the Harlem Globetrotters in order to earn money for himself until he became eligible to enter the NBA. In 1959, Wilt joined the Philadelphia Warriors. By the time he retired in 1973 with the Los Angeles Lakers, Wilt had changed basketball more than any player before or since. Here are some of his records. Highest PER for a highest career
the
NBA's
NBA.
all-time leader in
Retired
rebounds,
as the NBA's
second
all-time
highest
leading
career
scorer,
point per
overall
game
in
average,
total
third
defensive
overall
win
in
shares,
total
second
offensive
all-time
win
in
shares,
win
most
shares,
points in a
most
game,
points
most
in a
rebounds
season,
in a
most
game,
rebounds in a
highest point per game
season,
average for a season,
highest
only
rebounds per
second
game
to lead the
average
league
for a
in
season,
unofficial
most
most
blocks
the
in a
highest
game.
rebound per game average.
Damn.
Wilt holds more records than anyone else in basketball.
Damn.
If someday in the future, every tape of basketball is destroyed, and all of the media and commentary about the game is lost, leaving us with only the record books, people will come to the conclusion that Wilt Chamberlain was far and away the greatest basketball player of all time.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair right there. That statement. If all we do is look at stats and nothing other than stats, Wilt wins. Hands down.
On top of his records, Wilt won
Which is funny. So all you LeBron fans out there who quote stats over winning, you would lose that argument anyways. Even if everyone agreed with you and stats are all that matters, it's still going to be Wilt Chamberlain. It's not going to be LeBron James being the GOAT.
MVPs.
Okay, hold on. Okay, 4 regular season MVPs, 2 championships, 1 finals MVP, 13 All-Star, 10 All-Team, 7 first. Okay. 4 MVPs, 2 championships.
3 of which came consecutively and 1 of which came in his rookie year. 2 championships with 1 finals MVP award. He would have won in 1967, but the award didn't exist yet.
Oh, okay.
He was selected to 13 All-Star teams and 10 All-NBA teams. His resume would have been even more impressive. But things like Defensive Player of the Year and All-Defensive teams didn't exist back then. His career accolades are certainly impressive, and they place him deeply into the conversation as the GOAT. But the funny thing about Chamberlain's records is that each of them comes with this kind of baked-in asterisk or caveat.
Yeah.
Okay, he averaged 50 points for a game for a whole season, but that was back when there were no other players of his size. Or sure, he averaged that many rebounds, but back then the pace was totally different, so they came more easily. We'll get into those caveats about Wilt's era in a second.
Okay,
but
because I am curious, because from what I do understand, the shooting percentage was extremely low during this era. But then again, I haven't actually researched it myself.
isn't it funny that Wilt...
The reason I bring that up, if you got a high-paced game with a low shooting percentage, that brings a lot more opportunity for a big man to get rebounds. It still doesn't mean that 35 rebounds is something to scoff at, though. You have to put in the effort to get those rebounds.
Wilt is the only player whose stats get scrutinized so thoroughly? We as basketball fans are so obsessed with stats and scoring, but when it comes to Wilt, we overlook so much of what he did. We love it when players score, more than anything. Oh, Michael dropped 55 on the Knicks after he came back from baseball. Kobe scored 81 in a single game. But when it comes to maybe the most talented and natural scorer the game's ever seen, we look for ways to discredit him. He dominates the tops of the records so often that I think we've developed a sort of mental filter where we ignore his name and look at everyone else's. For so many of the players that have a case as the GOAT, I find myself having to justify the fact that they don't have the best stats of all time. But with Wilt, I find myself having to justify his stats because they're too good.
Yeah.
To understand how he was able to achieve such eye-popping stats, let's talk about what a superhuman athlete he was.
To be fair, even in the 80s when I was growing up with basketball, we didn't know where to categorize Wilt because his numbers, all we could do is say, yeah, the game was different back then. But like, it's such an anomaly that we have, our brains can't even fathom the numbers that we're hearing.
While he was at Kansas, Wilt was a superb track and field athlete. He excelled at a number of short-distance sprinting events, competed in the shot put and triple jump, and won the Big 8 conference in high jump every year he attended Kansas.
Yeah, freak
Arnold
athlete.
Schwarzenegger once described working out with Wilt Chamberlain.
Wilt Chamberlain.
You trained with Wilt Chamberlain?
Yeah, Wilt Chamberlain.
They were in Conan the Barbarian, at least one of them, at least the first one together. So yeah, they did train.
Would be in the gym, but we eventually ended up doing a movie together.
Yeah, Conan.
Conan the Destroyer, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I was a big fan of his because he came to the gym and he would do a tricep extension that, like, the big guys, the strongest guys, would do, let's say, 120 pounds, let's say, tricep extension, pulling down, right? He would come and he would do 150, 170 pounds. Wilt Chamberlain. That's how strong he was.
They always said he was by far the strongest person who's ever played in the NBA.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember that he lifted me up like with one arm like nothing.
Along with Jim Thorpe, Wilt Chamberlain was the preeminent athletic.
So I was wrong. It was not the first Conan movie, but the second one, Conan the Destroyer.
Athletic talent of the 20th century at over 7 feet tall. Had Chamberlain lived in another time, they would have built statues and temples to him. And on top of all of it, he was a tremendous passer and led the league in assists in 1968. That season,
from what I understand, though, he did that out of spite because everyone was calling him a ball hog. So then he just started passing all the time. And see, that's where I have a problem. But I'm gonna keep going because I feel like he's doing things more to prove a point. Instead of, I'll do this because it'll help my team win. But once again, I'm biased here. I think I'm biased, so I want to keep learning.
Finished with 702 assists. Just 2 fewer than...
Say it again.
That season, he finished with 702 assists. Just 2 fewer than Ricky Rubio's ever racked up in a single season.
So like 9
As
a game.
far as his basketball skill set, Wilt's biggest flaw was his infamous free throw shooting. Definitely a deficiency, but not one that I think mars his overall prowess.
The fact that he's a big guy, centers get the pass on the free throws.
Some of his success and records surely came from the era that he played in. Basketball was dramatically different in the 60s and early 70s when Wilt was playing. Back then, there were more field goal attempts, which resulted in more points and available rebounds. And back then, the average player wasn't nearly as athletic as the average player today. Sure, there were other big centers like Walt Bellamy and some others, but Wilt was decades ahead athletically and had an advantage in nearly every game because of that. So that's it, right? Wilt was ahead of his time athletically, competed against scrawny white guys in a faster era that made stat inflation easier. If you were to take a 27-year-old Wilt Chamberlain and put him in the league today, he'd be just another good player who kills it on the glass like Andre Drummond. No.
I doubt it because the amount of effort and energy that he has to use, no matter what, to pull in those stats. Give me like 50 points and 30 rebounds and 30 assists. Or not 30 assists, but like say 10 assists. Like, that takes a shit ton of energy, you guys. And so you can't just be like, throw him into modern era and people are more talented shooters or whatever nowadays. And just think like he's not going to do what he did. If he puts that amount of effort in today's game, forget about it. He'll still be racking in those stats.
For one, the advantages of Wilt's era help make sense of how he was able to set such unbreakable records, but it doesn't detract or excuse the fact that he was actually able to accomplish them. Second, yeah, a 27-year-old Wilt Chamberlain straight from 1964, if you plucked him up and put him into the league today, would have been a great player. Would he be an all-time great? Maybe, maybe not, but you're giving him more credit than you think you are when you say that. Imagine you instead took a 13-year-old Wilt Chamberlain and brought him up as a player like every other great prospect. Now he gets to take advantage of 60 years worth of advancement in nutrition, exercise regimentation, recovery science, transportation, and equipment technology, especially the advancement in shoes. You know that they used to play basketball in Chuck Taylors, right? You'd be giving Wilt Chamberlain the opportunity to capitalize on his most valuable attributes. That Wilt Chamberlain would be an all-time great any way you want to look at it.
Absolutely. And the argument's always funny because if Wilt was brought up in this era, then he'd be training to play this style of basketball his whole life. So of course he'd be good. The point is he a great athlete or not? And the answer is absolutely yes, he is. So yeah, he would be very successful in today's game if he was born and raised in this era.
And finally, yes, Wilt took advantage of the inefficiencies of his era. But isn't that what everyone does? Every player has era-specific advantages that they use for their benefit. What's Steph Curry supposed to say? You know what, guys? I know that the game today revolves around three-point shooting, and I'm really good at three-point shooting, but it just gives me too much of an advantage, so I just won't take his money.
I know, right?
Of course not. Take advantage of your advantages. It's what great players do. All of this stuff I'm saying might not even matter to you. You might be sitting there with your arms crossed saying, nope, Wilt Chamberlain can't be the best because he played in the past. And I didn't see him, so he can't be the best.
See, that's my problem is I didn't see him. So I leave my opinion of his ranking very clouded and not definitive. You know, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to have a real place for him. Like an accurate place for him on my list. It's always changing where I put him with the all-time greats, because for me there is an asterisk, and it's not his fault. It's my fault. I did not witness enough of his playing to really gauge it.
And honestly, I get that. As sports fans, we want to see the best. It's why we watch. What fun is it to admit that the best player your sport's ever seen started his career the same year Alaska was admitted into the Union? It happens in everything: music, film, sports. It's the struggle between nostalgia and recency bias. But just because it might be a bummer to admit that you didn't see the best doesn't mean it can't be true.
For sure.
So why can't a player from the past be the best? I'm sure a lot of you, though, might be willing to concede that a player from that era could be the best, but you wouldn't say it was Chamberlain. I'm sure some of you are saying it's his rival, Bill Russell. Russell won 11 championships.
Better winner, but on an individual level, Wilt was better. But Bill Russell definitely has the rings, so better leader, I guess. We can put him in.
In 13 years compared to Wilt's 2. Russell was described as the ultimate competitor and as a leader who time and time again inspired and enabled his teams to succeed. And that brings us to the crux of Wilt Chamberlain's case. History says that Wilt was the ultimate athletic specimen who excelled in every physical sense, but who had a critical lack of killer instinct. According to his reputation, Wilt was missing the leadership abilities and intangible mental qualities that are required to win. Wilt is remembered as someone who chased stats, was a bit of a head case, and could never figure out exactly what it was he wanted from basketball. Because of that reputation, Wilt remains an intensely polarizing player. So if I want to make the case that Wilt was the greatest basketball player of all time, I have to find a way to assuage the idea that he never had what it took to be a winner. To do that, I want to use Bill Russell as his analog, because they played in the same era and because Russell represented everything Wilt couldn't be or do.
Fair. Good.
They're remembered as inverses of each other and embody contrasting ideas. Team versus individual. Defense versus offense. Me versus we. And ultimately, winning and losing.
I'm glad to see him address this, though, because that's all the stuff I said in the beginning of this video, that those are my perceptions of him.
But why are they remembered as representing things so starkly? Again, because they're from the past. They're practically myths and legends at this point. There's less footage of them than there is of other great players, and because the narrative became easy to write as their careers went along. David beat Goliath, and nobody roots for Goliath.
Yep.
But was the fight even fair for Goliath? For starters, Bill Russell consistently had better teammates than Wilt Chamberlain did. That's as good as a fact to me, and I will maintain it even when I make the case for Bill Russell. Wilt played with great players in his career, but Bill played
Now
with
I get why you asked me to watch this one first. Cool.
Bob Cousy, a league MVP, John Havlicek, who went on to lead the Celtics to 2 titles in the 70s, Sam Jones, a 6-time All-Star and master in the clutch, and other Hall of Famers like Tommy Heinsohn, Casey Jones, and Frank Ramsey.
KC.
And of all the great players that Wilt played with, he usually caught them at the beginning or the end of their careers. Aside from notable exceptions like Jerry West and Hal Greer. Obviously, it's easier to be a better teammate when you have a better team, but I think
he's doing that one-handed thing that MJ did, but his hand's even bigger.
that the most important factor that Russell benefited from, even more than his teammates, was the leadership afforded to him by his head coach, Red Auerbach. Red was one of the most forward-thinking minds to pass through the NBA and is still on the Mount Rushmore of head coaches. Of the Celtics' 17 championships, Auerbach was a pivotal piece in 16 of them, either as Boston's coach, general manager, or president.
Crazy.
He drafted Chuck Cooper, the first African-American, into the NBA and hired the first black NBA head coach in Bill Russell.
Please tell me Red has at least one statue in Boston.
Red was an intense, competitive coach who adapted his methods to suit his players. In his own words, if you have some great potential players, there are 2 things. 1, you help make them great. 2, you devise a method of play that is suitable to their talent. And that's the thing that I think Wilt lacked more than anything. A coach who could lead him, tell him what to do and how to do it. Wilt was a prideful guy, and he cared about what people thought about him, which is one of the most natural and human things to care about. Of course, the thing that most people knew Wilt Chamberlain from was basketball, and as a basketball player, Wilt was constantly ridiculed by the media for not winning championships every single year. As he began to develop this reputation of a loser, he started scoring more points so that he could say, well, look, I scored all these points, I got all these rebounds, I did my job.
Once again, that's the LeBron James syndrome. He even said it once at a press conference during an NBA Finals. He was like, I got a 30-point triple-double. I did my part. So yeah, Wilt was doing this before. I can't win, so let me just rack up a bunch of stats so I look good.
And so he became known as a selfish scorer. And what did he do? He led the league in assists. What do you think people said about him then? That he was stat obsessed.
Yeah. Yeah, you know how I feel.
So goes the legacy of Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt needed a coach who could help him channel all of his abilities into a winning style of play, no different from guys like Kobe or Michael. I'd argue that if Wilt had played for a great coach like Red Auerbach for his entire career, he would have experienced every modicum of success that Bill Russell did. I promise I didn't just pull that theory out of my ass. I'm arguing that because it happened twice. The 2 seasons that Wilt won it all, 1967 and 1972, were marked by the influence of outstanding coaches on Wilt's game. Alex Hannum coached Wilt for 3 full seasons, in 1964 on the San Francisco Warriors, and in 1967 and 8 on the Philadelphia 76ers. When Hannum was hired by the Warriors in '64, he inherited a team that was beginning to unravel. The franchise had been sold during the season and relocated from Philadelphia to San Francisco, leading to the retirement of veteran scorers Paul Arizin and Tom Gola. As a result, Wilt shouldered the scoring burden and averaged 44 points and 24 rebounds a game, believing that doing so was the only way to keep the Warriors competitive. The effort was in vain though, as the team lost over half their games and missed the playoffs. And so, Hannum went to work, changing the team's approach and trying to implement strategies that would lead to winning basketball. By May of that season, this was the headline in Sports Illustrated. The article describes Chamberlain as exactly the kind of player you would hope he could be. He was scoring less, depending on and trusting his teammates, was defending at a high level consistently, and doing all of the little things that led to the team's success. By all accounts, that change was due in no small part to Hannum's influence. Unlike every coach before him, Hannum had stood up to Chamberlain, and in doing so had earned the superstar's respect. When Hannum stressed the importance of team play and defensive intensity, Wilt listened. The result was a 17-game improvement from the year prior and a trip to the NBA Finals, all with a team that had barely changed in personnel. For the first time in his career, Wilt Chamberlain, the player who could do anything as a player, was learning how to play. The following year, the franchise found itself in financial trouble, and the owner traded Wilt to the Philadelphia 76ers for cheap players and cash. Wilt won 55 games with the club in his first full year there, and by the following season, Hannum had been hired to replace Dolph Schayes as head coach. Philadelphia started that season an unprecedented 46-4. By the end of the season, Wilt had averaged just 24 points a game.
Wow.
The lowest he'd had at that point in his career, to go along with nearly 8 assists and 24 rebounds a game. 6 players on Philadelphia had point averages in the double digits. Wilt's abilities hadn't changed. His approach had. That Philadelphia
he was
team
thinking about team first.
Finished the regular season with 68 wins and 14 losses.
68?
The best record the NBA had ever seen. After dispatching Oscar Robertson and the Cincinnati Royals, Wilt found himself facing a familiar foe in the Boston Celtics. But with superb teammates and an outstanding coach, Wilt led the 76ers past Boston in just 5 games, ending the Celtics' 8-year reign as champions.
Wow.
In the finals, Wilt defeated his old team, the San Francisco Warriors, in 6 games to claim his first championship and cap off the most outstanding professional campaign the NBA had ever seen.
Now this is interesting because what changes? Is it just a new coach after this? Like, I feel like once he figures this out and he figures out how to win, he should just keep doing it, right? So what changes?
A year later, Wilt led the NBA in assists, en route to a league-high 62 wins. After a 7-game loss in the playoffs in the Eastern Finals, Hannum retired, and relations between Wilt and the 76ers ownership had soured.
Okay, so there it is. But still, he has this knowledge of how to win. Okay, so what happens next?
He then demanded a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers. With the Lakers, Wilt was saddled with coaches Butch Van Breda Kolff and Joe Mulaney. Not exactly household names. The Lakers had good seasons under those coaches, but were never able to climb all the way to the top of the mountain. Bill Sharman, a hard-nosed, no-nonsense coach, took over in 1972. That season, the Lakers went on to win 33 games in a row, a record that still stands. That Lakers team finished with a record of 69-13, surpassing the mark set by Wilt's 76ers 5 years earlier. In the playoffs, they lost just 3 games on their way.
Wow, by the way, the unstoppable shot.
5 years earlier.
The skyhook. Stopped. Damn.
Playoffs, they lost just 3 games on their way to the championship. Jerry West said of Sharman, he told us he thought that if we played the way he wanted us to, that we could beat anybody. He got us to believe that right away, and he did it without raising his voice once all year. As for Wilt, he was simply the guy that got us here. So there you go. That's my case. Wilt was a victim of pressure and a lack of consistent quality coaching. You might be saying, but Clayton, what about college? Wilt lost that UNC game under Fog Allen, and that proves that he's fundamentally a loser. And that's where you're wrong. Because guess what? Wilt never played for Fog Allen. Allen turned 70 at the end of Wilt's freshman year, and 70 was the mandatory retirement age for state employees in Kansas at the time. They appealed it, they lost, Allen retired, and Wilt didn't get along with his replacement. In Wilt's entire career, he had exactly 2 great head coaches on 2 different teams. Both times, he turned in seasons that broke records for wins and ended in championships. So much for not being a winner. I know it's a what if, but if you'd given Wilt a coach like Red Auerbach for his entire career, he'd have the most decorated resume in NBA history.
It's hard to argue.
But remember, we're not talking about the greatest resume.
Yeah.
We're talking about the greatest basketball player of all time. And by just about every metric that exists, we're talking about Wilt Chamberlain. One last quote from Chuck Klosterman. Russell possessed intangible greatness, which means sport writers can make him into whatever metaphor they desire. Russell was the central figure for a superior franchise, so history suggests he was the greater, more meaningful force. His wins validate everything. If you side with Chamberlain, it seems like you're siding with the absurdity of numbers. But consider this question. In an alternative universe and with a different attitude, could Chamberlain have been Russell? Probably. Could Russell have ever been Wilt? Never. No chance. Chamberlain is the only human who could have ever been Chamberlain. Hi, thanks for watching. So since the last time I uploaded my...
See? He's good at this, man. Clayton is good at this. Because he got me at the end there. Excuse me. He got the feels at the end there. But I got to remind myself, we're not here to talk about what ifs. We're here talking about what is and what is reality. And the reality of it is he lost more than he won. And it's just, you can't escape it. You know, LeBron James is going to have to deal with that inescapable argument as well. That he could get to the finish line, but he just couldn't get it done very often. And to be fair, Wilt got it done even less than LeBron. Different circumstances, all that, I get it. But the end of the day, we're going to remember LeBron won 4, Wilt didn't. And they both had losing records in the finals. So it kind of just like disqualifies it. But not to discredit this video. This video was fantastic, and I actually learned quite a bit about Wilt. And I'm glad to see him addressing the concerns that I had. And I'm sure a lot of people clicked on this video with those same concerns. Was he just a selfish player? I don't know. I still don't really know. But like, is it like Clayton says, where he just needed a better coach? I don't know. It's impossible to know. And we will never know. But being a team captain for that many years, and Clayton did mention that most coaches were like afraid to coach Wilt, except for that one coach that came in and coached him for a couple of years, and they had a bunch of success together. So if every other coach was not telling Wilt what to do out of fear, then Wilt had a lot of power. And if he really was that great of a winner, he would have figured out a scheme that would work, as opposed to just a scheme that would allow him to stat pad. Anyways, these are all just my opinions. I don't know, like, none of this is fact, because once again, I didn't watch his whole career. You know, when I speak about someone like LeBron James, and I speak out about, I call out all the BS and the stat padding and all this stuff, I can do so confidently because I've watched his entire career. Like, from his first game all the way till now, I've been paying attention. And I can say the same about, you know, like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, because, yeah, I was there. I was there watching it, so I have very definite or definitive opinions on those guys. But Wilt, man, I don't. I have my opinion, my view. I can tell you what it's based off of, but I can't validate it, you know? Like, I can't just say it so confidently. But anyways, everyone, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and hope you guys check out Clayton's channel. Like I said, it's fantastic, and it looks like the next one to do is going to be Bill Russell. So put your opinions down below in the comments. What'd you think about the video? Can you tell me where you put Wilt on your top 10 list of all time? Greatest players of all time? So, I mean, we're talking about like the GOAT list, you know, the greatest of all time. And, yeah, as an individual player, he might be number 1. But when you have to combine, you know, when we're searching for greatness, and such a huge part of greatness is winning, he's not number 1 on my list, you know. That's MJ. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought. Let me know what you think about my opinion. And we'll have a good conversation down below like we always do. Everyone, I appreciate you watching. Like the video if you haven't done so yet. It helps me out a bunch. Subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. Hit that bell to get notified for the next one. And the most important thing before I forget, be water, my friends. Peace out.